Good evening, viewers. Hope all of you are trying to keep as much possible truly well, and you're really working towards it. Today, we are really here with to address one more critical subject, that is academic panic in the pandemic, with a well-respected psychiatrist expert out here with us today. Um, to give you a quick introduction of TruWealth Integrative Health TV, it's an initiative of TruWealth Integrative Healthcare, which provides integrated health and personalized nutrition advice to control, prevent, and reverse lifestyle, autoimmune, as well as infectious diseases to help reach the ultimate goal of holistic health and happiness. TruWealth Integrative Health TV shares authentic knowledge and wisdom from healthcare and nutrition stalwarts to help you separate science from the hype arising from the social media explosion and the sudden health and nutrition wisdom, and thus can aid you in making the right health and nutrition choices. Rightly so, we do have a great expert with us. I am, of course, Rajashree, Gadgil, nutrition expert, founder and CEO of TruWealth Integrative Healthcare and Health Centers. And I do have a 20 years global experience in nutrition formulations, continuing medical education, and more. But it's not really about me today. It is about your questions regarding so many anxieties our children could be facing. And the expert today out here, I would like to introduce her. She is Dr. Anagha Vaze. She's, of course, MBBS and DCM from the Coveted Sign Hospital. She's a consultant psychiatrist at the Institute for Psychological Health in Thane, which is again a very renowned center in Mumbai and also India. She's been practicing for 18 years. She has been running many community mental health programs and training programs, even for medical students. She has been an all-rounder at studies, music, sports, and more. I want to highlight this because that really will help us solve a lot of questions out here today. And more importantly, she's a mother of two who have actually been through the crucial years of education and career through this pandemic. So we are going to get a lot of practical tips from her as well. And more than anything else, she's a dear school friend from our own coveted Sulochana Devi Singhania school. So really a perfect lens to address the subject of academic panic in this pandemic. And I would like to welcome Dr. Anagha Vaze on this virtual stage, as we call it. And such a pleasure to have you, Anagha, Dr. Anagha, out here, and Anagha for me, of course. But you're going to really talk on something which so many of us are really waiting. You already have a lot of Zoom participants and online participants wanting to, listen from you. But first and foremost, how do you feel being out here with us today?
Thank you, Rajashree, for that introduction and such a lovely welcome. It is an immense pleasure to be with you on this platform today because I have seen the fantastic work that you've been doing through this entire COVID year when we have all been restricted to our homes. And it's really admirable what you're doing. And I'm sure lots of people have taken a lot of valuable and authentic information from the show that you've been doing. Thank you for having me over.
That's again, the pleasure is all mine, really. But so we are, to say so, it's been 100 years ever since we have faced anything like this. So our parents haven't faced it, we haven't faced it. So we all don't know what really we are facing. In these unprecedented times we call them, but they're not getting over. We had the lockdown 1.0, and now we have lockdown 2.0. It's unprecedented or unprecedented, and you're getting hammered. So honestly, right now, we all really understand in first place what we are going through, and everyone has their own story. Everyone is having their highs and lows. I think first and foremost, we really want to understand from you what are really you all going through. You surely are talking to a lot of people and guiding them. So if you can really help us understand the fact, what are we going through right now?
Rajashree, I'd like to jump into the what our children are actually going through. And well, we all of us are into the thick of things. And we are facing lots of these uncertainties, lots of these new challenges which we've never had before. Uh, Having said that, our children themselves are going through a lot, which we are able to see one on one. But I'm not sure whether we really understand what they're going through, right? I'll start off with what our little and not so little ones are actually facing. Look, they are in the developmental age right now, where there is constantly something happening. Their brain cells are proliferating, their neuronal circuitry is making zapping across here and there. And all of that happens through their daily routine, the kind of upbringing that we've had, the kind of years these kids have had so far. So going to school, meeting friends, that's a that's an important part of socializing. That's an important part of building social relationships, not just with friends, it's with teachers, important other aunts and uncles of family, and even parents of their peers. Some of the children make really good relationships, build good relationships with the parents of their best friends. And these relationships are an extremely important part of their makeup and their nurturance. Um, Going to school, are the older ones going to college? They are in the years when they are exploring their sense of self, their sense of self reality, self worth, and self identity is what is getting built right now. And how does this happen? When they expand their exposure from the little ponds of their school and their classes, and moving on to college and moving on to university. That's how their sense of self-worth and self-identity is going to start developing. That's where they're going to meet their peers. That's where they're going to have meaningful friendships. That's where they're going to explore their interests with probably the opposite sex, romantic relationships. That's where their interest in finding someone for themselves and their hormones have all started becoming alive, right? Sports, physical, just play, which is such an important part of the kid's life. Just playing, just being outside in the open air with friends, just hanging out, or sports. They're pursuing their different hobbies. Our kids are currently, for the past 1 year, and probably for longer, we don't know how much longer, they are missing out. They have had a complete stop, a complete lack of all these important developmental inputs. And this is something which we have to really bear in mind, that in their growing up years and in their development, these are important aspects which they're lacking in. All their schooling is happening through online classes, online lectures, and kids are fed up. Kids are fed up of sitting in front of the screen. There is the lacking concentration, focus, there is no interest, there's lack of motivation. The screen, for all of us, it's such a visually dynamic experience with color and constantly moving and changing images, a background score. That's to keep our senses engaged. Even for us adults, that's the kind of screen viewing we have. And how can we expect these little ones and these youngsters, how do we expect that they're going to find this online school of any interest? All they see is the same static image of the teacher, and with all due respect to teachers, they're all trying their best right now in the best possible way, but the same monotonous monologue, no interaction with friends, no way to make a little mischief, run around a little, burst out their energies. And all of this is what is a big lacune. Kids, talking of little ones, parents are home during this lockdown. They've probably never seen their parents home for for so long at a time. They're happy to have their parents home, especially those who have both parents working. But are the parents available because they're working from home? So these children are conflicted because they see them there in front of them, but they're not allowed to access them. So they are conflicted, they're frustrated. We talk about the older age group, who for them friends are most important right now. Parents take a backseat. So they're probably getting too much of parents right now. And they could do without it, with the constant criticizing and preaching. My younger one, who's 15 years old, one of these days when both of us were, he had a little too much of us, and he said, now I understand why parents send kids to daycare. I wish you guys could just go off to office. That's the adult daycare that we children need. so, this is there is a lack of space for those of us who are privileged among us who have space. But then there is this crowding, there is no availability of space, and children do not have the freedom to just be themselves, which, even though school can be restrictive, that is the place, the bus stop, the walking back from school or going to classes. Despite the study part, they have this free time, they have this time to be themselves. And I think through this 1 year, and probably a little more, lots of kids have lost out on that aspect. Obviously we're going to expect them to be moody, we're going to expect them to have fluctuations and irritation. We are stressed. So this interaction very often may not be a healthy kind of interaction, and obviously as parents that is distressful to us. So we are facing difficulties, all of us are facing difficulties. But having said that, after having gone through the gamut of things that our children are facing, parents have to realize that children are much more resilient than we adults are. That is simply because they do not have as many preconceived notions as parents. Their ideas are partially formed or unformed. And so they do not have any grudges. They do not have any fixed ideas, right? So it is easier for them to see and find out new perspectives or to generate alternatives because they are less opinionated. They are able to see much more and in many more different ways than probably we parents are. What do they actually need from us is this freedom to be allowed to generate alternatives. So what do I mean by generating alternatives and freedom to generate alternatives? Our little ones, bored out of their wits, don't know what to do with themselves. They're running around, jumping around. And what do? We tell them, we are stressed out too. So we tell them, keep quiet. We give them restrictive orders. But if we allow them to find their own ways of doing something which is less noisy for a smaller period of time, we sit with them and inclusively together allow them this freedom to come up with alternatives. Okay, look, I have this particular meeting which is going to go on for 2 hours, and I definitely cannot afford to be disturbed. I would like you to be a little quieter. Can you think of ways to help me out? But in order to do this, what we need to give these children is a basic respect. It's only then that it is possible that we'll be able to do that. And by basic respect, I mean irrespective of their age, chronological age, however small or big they are, we have to give them the basic respect that I trust you to come up with something. I trust you to be able to think. And I trust you enough to give you a patient listening ear. Now, these kids, we have to understand what is different about them is that they have a large bank of information with them now. This current generation of kids have a large quantum of information, much more than us. Secondly, they have a faster information processing apparatus up there. Again, much more than us. So what they basically need, right? What they probably lack is this ability to delve into their experiences and find meaning out of that, right? So what they need from us is to bridge this gap where we bring in our experiences. We tell them about our something like this that we've gone through, and what have we learned from them. Now, by this, I don't mean we preach to them. We don't say, look, in our times, we didn't have all this technology at hand and we did our own things. No, we didn't need anybody to tell us what to do, right? Instead, we sit with them and tell them, okay, this is, I had faced this kind of problem, a similar kind of problem that you're facing. And this is what I did, and this is what I learned out of it. Some of these things didn't work for me, right? So you give them this empathy, you give them a listening ear, and you give them the benefit of your experience, but not in a preachy way. So getting this together, their immense information capacity, their fast information processing speed, and our handholding, where we allow them the freedom to generate alternatives, to find some solutions to the current problem at hand, that is very often sufficient for the problem to get solved. So we have to remember to be inclusive, get them inclusive, and to generate problems, generate alternatives to problems. Another thing we have to remember, that these kids are looking to us as role models in everything. Yeah. That includes emotional coping. And this whole year that all of us are going through, even though children are lacking in so many things, so many experiences, this is one valuable experience that they can learn from us. So how are we as role models? What are we showing them as role models? We don't have to create an image that we are invincible. We don't have to show them that we are super parents and nothing touches us. Show them our vulnerabilities. We don't become weak parents by doing that, right? But how do we do this? What we are doing is we are showing them that we accept that it is possible to feel any and every kind of emotion. And it is okay to feel different emotions, right? If I hear in all these times, we are having so many different, we getting news of near and dear ones, of friends going through the current difficulties of COVID. If I hear the news of some bad news, it is okay that I talk to my child and tell him or her that, look, this is what I heard, and I feel so sad about it. And I think I'm going to feel low because whoever it is was dear to me, depending on the child's age and his abilities to process it. For this, what we need is emotional transparency. And emotional transparency is very important. Lots of us we are well-meaning, obviously, all parents are. So there are so many of us who feel we need to shield our children from these distressful emotions. We don't want them to worry. We don't want them to feel sadness or grief or be upset. And so we try and shield them. But we need to understand, so this is a lesson for us parents, that there is strength in sharing. And children can give you support and that strength back, while all the while learning from this role modeling that you're doing. And so we are teaching them not to repress emotions and have a invincible front as adults. We are teaching them to accept emotions, understand them, process them, and help each other out. Sometimes I could be on the receiving end. I would probably need emotional support and help. There are times when my child is going to need that. There are times when my parent is going to need that. And if we safely share our feelings, emotions, show our children that it is okay to feel different things. It's okay to be low. It's okay to feel upset and sad. That's when we are giving them this lesson in emotional intelligence. Right?
Perfect. So I think, so very elaborately actually gave us a lot of input as, of course, being a mental health, advocate. But more than that, you did suggest a lot of practical things which we can do, as parents, what all we have to really start doing. And something where you spoke about, of course, about the kids being more resilient, they being more faster than us in understanding. And interestingly, the emotional transparency. We all know we have to keep it, but when you say emotional transparency, I think it becomes more apparently clear.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are a lot of questions. How how do we keep our transparency up when there's so much of negativity there, and when we have to communicate the negativity, or we have to communicate about getting infected, or how to stay secure from getting infected, things like that. All these things, different children have different issues. Some get very scared. Some are, despite trying hard. For example, my child does that. It's so many attempts, but just doesn't get the point that there's anything to fear about.
Okay.
So it's like, what's going to happen? It's going to be another infection, and we'll get over it, because they've probably gotten as how do we communicate this to them? You did give a lot of other brilliant suggestions how we communicate, but in this situation, it's very hard for a lot of parents to do that.
Okay. Uh, it's not just children, but even we adults who have developed this COVID fatigue. It's been months since we've been doing all the right things. We've been doing, being good citizens, and obviously our little ones, they've been good children. And we have done everything that we needed to do. But we see ourselves in the same situation all over again. And this gets us gets our spirits low. It gets the children's similarly. I'm sorry, it gets their spirits low. It is a challenging situation where some children just do not get, or are absolutely uninterested in now listening to you, right?
Yeah,
um, there are a couple of more communication skills that I would like to talk about right here, right?
we would
uh,
definitely want to know that.
we all know what empathy is. We talk about empathy, right? By empathy, we mean we need to understand what the other person is going through. We need to be able to put ourselves in their shoes, and give them the requisite support, empathize with them. Now with children, when they are frustrated, irritated, no longer wanting to listen to you, empathy is something which can at least start the communication going, right? In order to empathize, we need to mirror their emotions, and we need to rephrase, paraphrase what they are trying to say, right? uh, if, for example, the child is fed up with class and says, I just don't want to sit on it, I'm getting up, I can't wait to go, it's just 5 more minutes, what's the point? How does it matter if I don't sit for this right now? Our reaction is going to be, we are going to be horrified, we are going to be stressed out, we are going to lash out at the kid. Look, you always do this, you never listen to me, rules are rules, why aren't you following them, right? And that's not going to get us anywhere. We've all been there, done that, and we know it doesn't get us anywhere. What can help is telling my child, yeah, I know, it's 5 more minutes of sitting there, It's 5 more minutes of going through all that you've been, last 40 minutes of boredom that you've gone through. And I understand. And I know that it can get really frustrating and boring. Once he knows that you've understood that and you're not snapping back and you're not, dictatorially telling him or her to sit right there, there is going to be a little ease. There is going to be a little lessening of the defiance. And the next step further, we can tell him, it's just 5 more minutes. It's been another 1 minute since we spoke. So that makes it just 4 more minutes. Is it possible that you can hang on just a little bit, have a little more patience? This pattern of communication where you're not negating the child's emotions or desires, and you are giving them the freedom to say the things they want to say, to feel the emotions they want to feel, but you are giving it back to them in a different format. You're letting them know that they are heard. We have listened to them. We have understood them. And again, we have empathized with them. Very often that is sufficient for them to stay put and decide, okay, mom's saying she seems to be a little, let me listen to her. Let me manage for the next 3 minutes. It won't be that bad. Coming to the question about infection, I'd like to talk about the other extreme of children, those who have fear. And that will answer the question about those who don't listen or are completely careless as well. Children are able to feel all kinds of, they may have all kinds of niggling worries, fears. Very often, they may be irrational, but they are not able to articulate them, right? With smaller children, we can just see it as they're getting anxious, they're getting out of control, they're getting irritated, they're getting agitated, or they're just screaming and screeching and unreasonable. They will not be able to tell you that I'm afraid when you go out of the house for work. They will not be able to say, if you are, whether I don't know whether you'll come back infected or not. They may not be able to say it. But with them, we need to try and understand what exactly are they going through. So that can be done through art, getting them to draw, what colors they use. The emotions do come out through all of this. We tell them stories, we ask them to make stories. So we are able to understand what exactly is preying on these little minds right now. With older children, there could be fears, there could be thoughts frequently. What if my beloved grandparent catches COVID and dies? There could be fears. What if both my parents die and I'm left alone in this world? There are many of us who would react to real horror and upsettedness if we hear this from the child. I think we're culturally ingrained to say, don't think like this or you're tempting fate. Or why are you thinking such bad things? Because it upsets us as well. The thought of it upsets us. But these fears, these thoughts need to be spoken out. Else they're just going to stay repressed and the child's anxiety will keep on building. Fears will keep on building until it moves to a completely unmanageable direction. Giving the child the freedom to speak out his or her mind. Obviously, empathy, again, is necessary. Giving them that emotional transparency. Look, I am feeling upset. How about you? What is happening with you? And giving them that trust and the confidence that they will be heard out regardless of what kind of irrational or apprehensible thoughts they speak out. And when that happens, then we can actually give them the concept of a surety of something happening and a probability of something happening. Because obviously, when I'm thinking, I am afraid that something to this extreme is likely to happen, and I keep thinking and mulling over it, to me, finally, it appears, okay, this is inevitable. So I address this with my child, the difference between something being inevitable and something being just a possibility. If I go out of the house without following any kind of COVID appropriate behavior, if I go out in a crowd completely blase, despite all the infections happening, and do not take all the required hygienic precautions, then it's possibly inevitable that I get infected. But on the other hand, if I do all of these things and everybody in the family and household follows these practices sincerely, then the probability of getting infected is really very minimal, is really very low. Again, vice versa. Probability of getting infected if we are careless is high. So depending on the fear that the child has or does not have, we have to give them this concept of probability and inevitability, right? That is when then, when the emotional angst or the emotional overload comes a notch down, that is then when we sit with the child and we ask and we talk about generating the alternatives that we talked of before. So that is when we use the problem solving approach together and give the child different ways of thinking about the same problem and different outcomes of this same problem, so that the fear does not continue. Then we are going to have an emotionally healthy child, for that, at least for that one concern, which is going to be a really grave one. And that holds true for all of us as well. At the same time, uh, continuing on that same topic, if the child is we need to see if the children are being bombarded with all the negative news and the negative coverage and all the horrible happenings that are currently going on. Does our child really need to see that? Does he or she really need that much of exposure to numbers? Do we need that? I think we need to cut back. We need to direct exposure as well as discussions between elders at home. Is that all that is the child is hearing, even though we're not directly speaking about it? We need to take care about that. And the other thing is information. Give them the right information so that they are sure about what they're thinking and how to think about this. But that has to be authenticated, that has to be authentic, not unadulterated or unfiltered social media information. I think that's our responsibility as parents. And that can bring down a lot of concern and worries that we seem to have about our children right now.
So my comment on this is on that part exactly. Doing these programs that we are doing today and we're relentlessly doing is really helping people being on the programs, reduce their anxiety themselves.
Yes.
I can tell you my own experience is being on so many programs, not hardly watching TV, but, have staying completely on the dot with what's going on is really helping people. And, I'm
Absolutely.
glad that you bring that up. And, that kind of answers the question why my child is probably not anxious about this is because he knows that,
He
the
gets this.
authentic information is going to
Yes,
come to me. So really getting
right.
very scary. Till then,
So very true.
so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the fear factor and the negativity on top of all that, the different culture that they're going through is really, quite difficult on them, I would say. And on that note, I think I want to jump into the academia point as well. Though the anxieties have definitely subsided quite a bit, but in these kind of situations, examination and the uncertainty about present and the future. So what do we, I guess, there? What is that we should really focus on is is the question, because I think we are very anxious about the present,
Yes.
but what is in store, the future, we don't know.
As parents, I think we need to have a think. We need to have a proper think as to what the priority right now is. Right? Like you said, this is an unprecedented condition that we are all facing. This is a catastrophe in a major part of the world, definitely in our country, which has been ongoing for quite a bit of time. And it's okay to have a pause, especially in academics, in goals, in aspirations. We have to keep our perspective a little realistic here and think beyond our individual child and their future. We obviously worry that this last 1 year of the kind of academics that they have been getting, they're probably not going to be skilled enough. They're probably not going to be able to cope up with live school once it starts. How will they get admission to the kind of college or school that they want to? Lots of kids, obviously, I know of children who are extremely happy that their board exams are cancelled. One of my son's friends said, I'm she was preparing for exams quite well, and she said, but I am happy that they finally took the decision to stop it, because now we can move on, and now we can do something else rather than having this hanging sword all the time of when and
Yes,
if exams will happen. So it's us parents who need to rework on our thoughts primarily, right? And then obviously there are the students who think it's immensely unfair. For those who are giving competitive exams, uh, they don't know when they are going to happen. For those who were well prepared all throughout the year and board exams, they the exams are cancelled and they don't know what kind of evaluation there is going to be. So people are going to be on a similar footing all over. Now, these children, we understand that it's completely unfair. It is unfair to those who have put in their bit and now it doesn't seem to matter. It is very frustrating. It is very morally upsetting that things have come to to this kind of head. But we as parents now have to show them that there are certain things which are within our control, factors which are within our control, and there are factors outside of our control, right? um, we parents need to understand that despite academics being on the back footing, our children have through this time learned life lessons which in future will be in good stand in good stead. They're learning that there is uncertainty in life. They're learning that everything that they want may not happen or the way they plan it. And they're learning acceptance, right? These are things that they have had to compulsorily go through. And we parents have to understand that this is their learning. Their learning hasn't stopped. Though their exams haven't happened, their learning hasn't stopped. Of course, when we talk about students whose future admissions and future career paths depended on what they were going to perform in right now, and that is that's stalled or that is completely overthrown, uh, we have to tell them that things are different. Things are out of our control. What is within our control is what we can work on. So if my exams are probably, HSC exams are probably going to happen sometime soon, but I don't know when, I don't know if they're going to be cancelled. What is in my control is to work at it, continue working at it to the best of my ability, to continue to keep my motivation going, to continue to keep myself healthy and fit, so that when and if exams do happen, I am well prepared to go ahead and give them. But if they don't happen, that is a factor outside of my control. Nevertheless, I have prepared, I have learned, I have academically gained something which will is going to be useful to me in the future career. Now it is very likely that things that you had planned out, for example, my older son, he was due to go abroad for undergrad, but he's done his entire 1 year of undergrad sitting right here at home. We may have to change our aspirations and dreams for this year, maybe for the next year as well. But that does not mean that it is going to, or this is the end of the world, or the end of a good career, or the end of your dreams and aspirations. You have to look at it as a speed breaker in your path, or maybe even a roadblock, which is making it essential that you find another path around it. But your ultimate goal is success ahead in life. And through all this, there is no one specific path. You can keep an open mind to find another path. And Rajashree, here is where compromise, adjustment, and adaptation is a concept that we need to understand, and children need to understand. A compromise is at behavior level. This is outside of my control. I can't do anything about it. I am upset. I am frustrated, but I have to compromise. I have to nevertheless look at some other alternatives for my admissions. I am not going to be happy about it. I am not going to be completely pro that change or adjusted to that change. But let us compromise for now. And then we move on to adjustment, which is where behaviorally I have changed. Emotionally also, I am taking steps forward. And finally is adaptation. I have adapted to something, is when my thoughts, emotions, and behavior, all of them are at peace with whatever is happening right now. Each of us will go through all these stages. I will not be able to adapt to something immediately. So it's okay. I have to start with compromise. But the faster I move on and reach adaptation, the less stress I will be facing through this entire process. And this is what children need to be shown. This is what children need to be told.
Yeah, I mean, all very practical inputs that most of us are going to take them home out here. And on that point, another very, I would say, crucial point that I would want you to sort of emphasize more on, because we've been talking about lockdown, and the being locked up feeling in the lockdown is something which is how do we unscramble the key for this? There are a lot of suggestions I would also want to share, but
Yeah.
we want to hear a lot from you as to what do you really suggest normally to kids, and what
I,
have you done at your home to unscramble the key really?
I know, Rajashree. Believe me, uh, all of us have had this feeling sometime or the other. But my question is here. Being locked up is in jail,
Yeah,
and we are at home.
yeah,
So we need to rethink our thoughts. Why should being at home be looked at as being locked up? Home is our safe haven. It is our children's safe haven. So if all of us are feeling locked up, I think we need to see how to make that house a safe haven. I understand. We love going out of the house. We love spending time with people. We love seeing new places, new adventures. But right now, it is just not possible. This is a factor which is outside of our control. Coming back to that. So, how do we best go about it? So, we have to understand that it is now time to think of our house as a safe haven. And what do we mean by a safe haven? A place where everybody is happy together, healthy together. We find ways to communicate with each other. We thankfully have a lot of technology, so we can communicate with lots of others outside. We can communicate with friends, we can communicate with family. I know of people who have set up lots of us have done that, Zoom meetings frequently through the lockdown, programs or projects together through different, uh, sorry, through different modalities. Uh, when it comes to children, our children have lost out on the structure that is part of their natural routine life. So it's important to bring in some structure now, right? Uh, School's over, I think, for a lot of kids now. I'm talking about the younger ones. They're free and summer vacation. So that's another big
So a lot of
question
parents
mark
are
in front of
what
us.
are you going to do
What
now?
are we going to do now? Exactly.
Another 5 hours.
So it is important that we bring in some structure to their day, right? Within this structure, we need play. This has to be within the house for now, right? Now, this kind of play, we need to come up with creative alternatives, and we accept the alternatives that we've asked them to generate. So if my child wants to play cards and I am not interested in playing cards, I say, no, I'm not interested. You go and find something else to do. Well, then that's not going to allow her or him to come back to you with things, right? So it's a cooperation. Some things that you suggest and some of my suggestions. So we come together, we agree to cooperate, and we come up with options for play, creative options for play. We come up for options for communications. We come up with options for physical activity. We thankfully have online platforms for all of these things now. So there are children who are learning yoga, there are children who are doing fitness online, they're learning new hobbies online, since you cannot actually go and play tennis outside, or you cannot go and play cricket outside. But then there are other physical pursuits that are possible through these media. So that's physical activity. uh, Food, I think that's your forte. Having the right kind of food, nutrition, maintaining health, and getting some creativity, showing them or enabling some kind of creative time, along with complete free time, complete freedom for the children to do what they like to do. Allow them to be themselves, allow them to shout, scream, cry, throw tantrums.
Yeah.
Yes, once in a while we have to allow them to do these things. But if we empathize, if we, you know, uh, allow them, if they let them feel that this is accepted and understood, they're going to bounce back much faster. And they're going to come to you if they are not able to do that. So we need a balance of all of these different activities and maintaining good health. I think that's a prime requirement.
So I do have a few suggestions here, and of course, food and nutrition, but more than that, practical again, some inputs. If
Mhm.
you're accepting it from the teenager side, moreover, and some teenager things where, I think there are two issues here. One, it's not even an issue, it's really about growing up. So, on one side, they're growing up, their hormones, their general physical growing up, and their mind growing up, their emotions. So, there's a lot of change anyways happening, which we parents anyways have to work on.
Right.
And then at the same time, we have this issue of staying at home completely. I would even say locked up, but again, trying to make them understand that this is social distancing. It is just physical distancing for some
Right.
time till we are going to get out of this. So while we are talking about that, I think helping these children probably set some goals. Even you could start with small goals and then go for a larger ones, and that way we teach them how to set these smaller goals. Maybe ask them to make their own schedules, timetables,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
when these, I'm talking about these typically 10 to 13-year-old kids where they haven't learned this at all, and take
Mm.
up hobbies, and like you said, creativity instills so much of passion. If that can instill passion in them, they are probably going to take up a lot of hobbies later. I think hobbies is sometimes something which kids don't get time for as they're growing up.
Very true.
Actually, ideal time they could utilize doing that. And I think another thing which parents got to do now, especially in this 1 month of vacation, is they should start delegating and making their children understand that, you know what, I am overworked. If you help me with things because now you have a downtime, we can just play more board games, we can do more stuff together, and kids understand that and they respect that. So,
Absolutely right.
so I
Absolutely right, Rajeshri.
yeah. So I think these things, if we can talk to them, and like you said, communication is the key, and
Yes.
listening to them and then try to tell them anything is very important. So
Right.
a few aspects, and then when we're talking about food, again, food is something. These are times where we are just trying to accomplish our physiological needs. There's nothing
Mhm.
more to it. Food is something which can do wonders because it can actually make you calm. It can give you good sleep. It can give you health, of course, energy, of course. And these going those lows in energy right now with the summer, hydration is extremely important. And keeping these kids hydrated, and also the deficiencies in terms of vitamin minerals is something which we should
True.
concentrate on. And sitting at home, every kid is deficient of vitamin D right now.
Hmm.
All that really is putting them low on energy. So then they have the low energy, and then they suddenly have the surges, and then they have so many other things to think of. Even while they're having their classes, that sort of blows up their anxiety. So I think what they're eating through the day is extremely important. When do they need the extra energy? That is the time the parents have to focus on that. This is the time they need energy. This is the time they need to sleep. So we have to feed them and foods which will actually aid them to sleep well. So, a lot is spoken about proteins and vitamin minerals, but yeah, you have to keep them going. And proteins is something we have to focus on. There are multiple reasons. They, of course, bone, muscle has to build. Also, weight has become a big issue with kids. So I think keeping the weight maintained, you have to small snacks to large whatever in plates. Kids enjoy proteins if you put them right in the plate. So these are things from my side, I think, and sugar again. I want to talk about it because
Hmm.
uh, feeding sugar is like also feeding mind at times. So you have to feed your mind. So make sure that you're feeding the mind because that's what we are talking about here. If you don't feed the mind, then they're going to get irritated, and that is unnecessarily affecting their health, their I
True.
would say their gut health. And if gut health is affected, then these kids can have more anxieties then
Mhm.
translate into not eating well further, or maybe eating more because of that. So all that, like you rightly said, balance has to be struck here as well. So it's very important.
Very true. Very true.
Use food also to there's a gut brain axis which we talk
Mhm.
about, and to balance it and to stay healthy from all sides. And I would keep reiterating fitness is extremely important. If not, get a small machine at home which can just sit in your house. Get a cycle, get something which kids enjoy, and they can do it at home. Right now they can't step out, so they and it's extremely important to stay fit right now for them
And
because
like you said, Rajeshri, we've talked a lot about what they're missing out on. But this is one of the things that this is the time can be used for building up for their health, their emotional stability, and like you said, they are finally getting time to do hobbies.
yeah.
So these are things we need to focus on.
So
Uh,
I think one more thing which you can reiterate, or rather, answer the question if you have the answer. That digital exposure is something you evidently spoke about,
ah, okay, okay.
but how much is good, how much is not too much, and all those questions
Okay,
always.
that is the question which all of us face. But I'm not going to address that. I will let me put it this way. Uh, they don't have, like we said, they don't have their regular routine. They don't have their normal routine where they're playing with friends, they're attending school, college, they're hanging out, they're meeting family, right? So they are obviously bound to be restless and bored. And screen games is a super fun way to be occupied, right? So is social media, where they're actually meeting up with people, whether their own friends or strangers, but they're meeting up with people and doing their own things outside of this restricted environment. So then, is that all fine? Well, anything in moderation is good. Is anything in moderation? Can't be too bad. During their vacation, can the time they're allowed to do this be a little more? That's up to us because they have nothing more to do. Uh, we try to wean them off by criticizing, preaching, shouting. We see them on screen, seem to see them on screen all the time. But we need to generate alternatives. We have to give them something to replace this. Many of us do try that. We do attempt it, and then we realize it's not working out. The reason could be this, that we are just not giving them attractive alternatives. Finally, those alternatives have to compete with the attractiveness of this glamorous screen,
Yeah.
right? So when we generate alternatives, are they attractive enough to for them to stay away from screen? And if not, then we need to work on them. We can, of course, take their help to work on it.
Yeah.
And once we do that, once there are alternatives available, then negotiating with them to cut down on certain times here and certain times there, then we need to be smart parents and smart at negotiation. And we decide what is comfortable for us, what is comfortable for the child, and whether there are times when we can be a little lenient. There are times when we cannot allow them that much of screen time because of, say, commitments that they are supposed to fulfill. But if there is nothing, if there is a free day, can we be a little lenient about their screen time? Now, that is something that we have to think out for ourselves and with our children. It's the inclusive problem solving again. Um, what I would like to reiterate, Rajashree, for all our parents is this. When we are talking of parenting, especially in these difficult times, we have to try and understand where we are at right now.
Yeah.
Am I doing everything all by myself? Am I trying to be a super mom or a super dad? Am I crumbling under the different pressures that I already have and trying to handle this aspect of parenting on my own? This is the time when parenting has to be shared between spouses, between grandparents, between whoever else there is in the house. Uh, if, Definitely in small nuclear families where both parents aren't working, that's not a viable option. But then can we induct a friend or a family member who has time on their hands and wants to or is willing to give inputs and keep the children engaged in some manner over virtual media? Can, for example, parents come together of friends, children who are friends? Can parents come together and uh, conduct some kind of activity or dialogues or just fun uh, time with these children to keep them occupied, especially for the younger ones? So, can this be a shared parenting? Because things like this work, things like this will not burden us as individual parents all the time. And secondly, we also have to see what our priorities are. Do I really need to stress about my 11th standard child and about whether he or she will be able to do well in 12th standard now? Do I really need to worry about whether the 12th standard exams in 2022 are going to happen? That is a factor completely outside of my control. And that's a factor which is, that is an event which is likely to happen in the future. Should I expend my emotional energies, which are already stretched thin, on something as unnecessary as this right now? Can I instead prioritize to what time I need to give my children or my ailing parents or my colleagues or my students? So we need to look at priorities and keep a perspective about the kind of times we are going through and what is really essential and what can be allowed, especially when it comes to our children.
Um, that's something which was wisdom that you shared with us, and especially for us parents to keep in mind. Really, couple of questions and that have come, and of course, uh, when we spoke about digital, I think a few other things which tips that we could do is, we have different gadgets these days. We have a phone, we have a tab, and we have a TV. Sometimes try to get your, or you have laptops, of course, try switching your kids from one device to other. That sort of also breaks the continuity of being on a phone or being on a
Mhm.
tab, because that's something which is more addictive. When same thing goes onto the TVs, it's at least not stretching the same muscles at the same time. So kids are at least not getting fatigued. Their eyes and muscles and bones are, they just get a different. If you have
That's
to
a
have
good
to
perspective.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to do a continuous digital, and they have projects, etc. So that can help. You could study together if that's put on a TV, and like you rightly said, with the grandparents also, they could do those kind of activities. And I think some of these competitive apps that are there, your kids could use them for learning, and at the same time, the competitive apps and maybe going back to books to study, and then going back to the app and taking those same exercises on the app can actually balance things out, and we can get kids to actually reading things in physical books and things like that. Think about all these creative ideas that we could actually engage our kids into. And one important thing I want to ask you is, because before I go to a couple of audience questions, music is something that's been in your family, and has been something that you've been practicing. Can music really help kids through these times? And if some of the kids have to take up music, what's your suggestion? How could we engage them into music?
That is a very important point, Rajashri. Music, naturally, neurochemically, it is known to calm down your body, your mind. Music, different aspects of music, whether you play an instrument, whether you sing, and not just music, also arts like dancing. When you engage in these different activities, different musculature, different abilities, fine motor skills, large motor skills in dancing, your rhythm, your ability to tell time, all of these things are actually, especially in younger children, they are building up their neuronal circuitry, they're building up their skills. Apart from the fact, like I said, music by itself is known to calm down high emotions, is known to be soothing, it is known to be calming. And that is something that we can do online in the current times. So, yes, arts and music, as in other creative pursuits, are something which we can definitely bring into children's daily routine. Yes, it is a part of my son's their weekly routine too, music and learning instrumental music.
So that's some input from you which was absolutely needed. But there are a couple of questions which I think are critical. One of them is, what guidance will you give for kids who got infected with COVID and are going through trauma, anxiety, as to what will happen to them now?
Okay. Uh, to kids who are currently infected, it is a very distressing scenario when your family is also probably infected. You have to, if it's not, you have to quarantine yourself from them and be away from contact. Contact and touch are extremely important for children's growth and adolescence as well. And here we are completely cutting off that, saying that that is dangerous, that is risky, right? So such a conflicting statement, Rajashri. Children need to be reassured, right, that this is temporary. Now here is where those authentic facts and information comes in,
Yeah.
right? This is a viral infection which is self-limiting at your age, and it's okay to give them a little misinformation here. It's at your age and at our age. It is not that much of a problem.
Yeah.
We will have to wait out through these 4, 5, 7, 15 days of isolation quarantine, after which we'll be back to normal. We will be back to normal within maybe 5 or 6 days physically. But in order to keep up with the protocol and not reinfect each other, we need to keep this distance. So bide your time. Children who do not have too much of morbidity, or the illness isn't causing them too much of trouble, right? They can be, they can continue their small routines, listening to music, being on screen, watching some programs, singing, doing a little bit of craft work, doing their own routine for themselves. They can be encouraged to do that. And isn't it such a big boon that we have technology and we can keep connected through closed doors, right?
Absolutely.
Show the children these positive points, show them the positive side of the situation, so that they are able to go through.
Right.
And it is one day at a time. It always helps to tell them, take one day at a time. How are you feeling today? Are you better than yesterday? When it's 6th or 7th day or 8th day of infection, we can tell them, look, yesterday you were this way, today you're a little better, tomorrow you're going to be even better. So how are we going to use your time today? These are things we can, these are inputs we can give them.
Uh,
And
and
yeah.
one more question is that, are there any mental or physical exercises that we can plan for our children to make it easy for them, to accept the change, or rather, keep them a little calmer? So there's anything that we can share?
Mhm. uh, any kind of physical exercise, any kind of physical exercise is good for emotion and emotional health, apart from obviously body health. Not all children are able to go through very structured exercises. Older children, if they're able to, uh, meditation and relaxation practices and deep breathing practices are very useful if they're able to do them. There shouldn't be an insistence on following just a particular kind of type of exercise, but it's okay for them to try different ones. It's always helpful if you're doing it together. So if children see parents doing it with them, like a group activity, they'll be more better motivated. They'll be able to stick up with it for longer. And again, if it becomes a part of their routine structure, there is not going to be much of resistance to doing it. So we are going to have more balance. Yes, they will have ups and downs. Despite that, they will have tantrum throwing days, but on the whole, ups and downs apart, they will still be better balanced, and keeping them mentally active, obviously, with things they enjoy doing, engaging them in things they enjoy doing. So yes, I think these things are for us to come up with creative alternatives along with their help. And there is so much we can do even with less of time, and they can do even with less of time and the restrictions that we have, as long as we have that kind of positive attitude most of the times.
So one final question, which I think is very important again, is uh, when do kids actually are in a situation where they need more help? I don't have the children who need help, or if the parents need there. But what are the times when you think we need to reach out to professionals?
Yes. uh, children exhibit their angst or their troubles mostly through their behavior, especially littler ones. Older ones might be able to say, I'm feeling so low, I'm feeling down, just don't talk to me, I want to be left alone. But younger ones, especially, are likely to exhibit in their behavior. So we have things like change in sleep cycles. They're not able to sleep, or they're going to have nightmares. They lose their appetite. They keep coming back to you all the time. Anxiety. In anxiety, they need that emotional body contact with someone all the time. They are not able to focus on what they want to do. They might start crying without reason. They might get irritable. They might regress to an earlier age, behavioral age. Older ones, they might stop communicating. They do not want you around. They do not want to talk. They shut themselves into their own rooms if they have them. Obviously, they're going to be defiant. They're going to be edgy, irritable. They will make their emotions loud and clear, right? Um, we need to, everything that we talked about is what we need to do with them. But in the current circumstances, in the current times, if you are hard pressed and already having your own challenges and just do not have the emotional bandwidth or the time to do this with your child, or you'd been doing all this and yet your child seems to be suffering, I think then definitely is the time that you need to consult a mental health professional. There is absolutely no reason to be afraid of it, ashamed of it. We are doing it for our children. Please don't hesitate to take help when it seems a little beyond you. That's my
That was
advice.
something I was going to ask you about because yeah, and that's why the final question that I wanted to put out here is that reaching out, Dr. Anagha Vaze is not someone who seems like a scary villain whom you want to reach out to, and if you reach out to her, the whole world is going to know that you've taken mental strength health or health or whatever. So I don't think there's something, and I keep saying this that when it comes to mental health, don't keep the stigma, and when it comes to nutrition guidance, don't keep away because people think they know everything when it comes to nutrition, and when it comes to mental health, they keep running away though they understand that
Very
there's
right.
issue here. So the stigma is one thing. Also, the other thing there's on one side there's stigma, on the other side there's too much noise when it comes to every person seems to be guiding the other about mental wellness and mental. My views on it, and there are some people who are of course trained. Just as you as psychiatrists, they're doctors, and on the other hand, there are psychologists, and on the other hand, there are also people who have taken other courses, and I'm not saying that they don't do a great job. There are some people who are doing exceptional job, and while we're falling short of doctors, these kind of professionals are really helping. But what's the best balance view we should have in this kind of a case that you would say? Because mental health is something that is more, I would say, more worrisome. The nutrition health also you could try to reverse later, but something going out, someone playing with your mind is something not good at all. Risky. So what's your
Uh,
suggestion there?
yes. When the children of all ages are, especially adolescents, are likely to go through moods and mood changes, and because their emotions and hormones are all messed up and they're just beginning to develop, they often themselves don't know why they're doing things they're doing, right? uh, One, communicate. As long as we have open communication channels between parents and them, not necessarily just parents, teachers, if they have a good rapport with their teachers can be a good point of contact, uh, extended family, friends, all of them can be your child's emotional network and emotional support. But when, despite all of this being in place, or when you do not have this in place, and your child is going through things which he or she is unable to communicate with you, or is letting you know, but you don't know what to do about it, you definitely should then consult either a child psychiatrist or a child psychologist or a counselor who works with children. Then, with their inputs, if there is nothing more long term that needs to be done or immediate that needs to be done, and you have cross checked that this doesn't need too much of intervention from a mental health professional, then, well, you can move on for development of the child, for self development, personality development, and then you can move on to these other experts with who give these inputs.
Glad you say that, clarify that, because that's very important again to bring out here. But I think a lot of questions that people had, we've tried to address, and you've given such great, I would say, and this is what why I'm a fan of you, because you're simple and practical. You're not, you have the science behind it, but it's not, you present it very simply instead of being complicated. So I think
Thank you,
that's
Rajashree.
why I'm sure this has been a good learning for a lot of us here. If you want to give us those two, three, four, five takeaways that we should drill it into our minds before we leave before we end the program today, I'm sure we're going to need more help from you as we progress, and hope that you come out of this sooner, if not
Yes.
later. And uh, so do leave us with those takeaways, and please, yeah.
Yes, like you said, we are going to come out of this sooner or later. Factor out of our control, we don't know. So, yes, keep focusing on whether something is within our control or it is outside of our control. And that which is in our control, we can keep working on. Working on something is towards problem solving. And that keeps us mentally fit and emotionally better. Two, with our children, we need to empathize. We need to give them emotional transparency. We need to take them as part of our problem solving unit and give them the freedom to generate their own alternatives. Because frankly, they can surprise us. Through all these COVID times, this has been a year of a lot of upheavals, but it is not as if there has been no learning. There has been much bigger learning, more valuable learning than just textbooks. And I think we parents have to keep that perspective and take it easy as well as be chill with our children.
That's do take away all that Dr. Anagha has told us here today. And I want to thank you and of course the viewers for being here. My couple of things that I want to tell people, and because people have to realize this here, but understand this is virus, and when we've always learned that is evolution, what we talk about, and virus is one of the first ones to evolve. This is evolution, and we talk about survival of the fittest. That's theory. So understand and remember that it's survival of the fittest, and we have to stay fit. And when I talk about fitness, it has to be a balance amongst mental strength, physical fitness, and of course, nutrition is pivotal in it as well. So if we have a balance of all these
Absolutely.
things, I think we are definitely going to strongly fight this and come out of it. Let's stay positive on that thought and stay at home right now. That's very, very important. And I will thank all the viewers and all the Zoom participants for being with us. Of course, we will take a few more questions from the Zoom participants after we are off live. And I will thank everyone. I'm just going to play a small promo of RSG Energy as they, keep relentlessly supporting us with the technical support at the back and also taking this program to multiple different channels. I leave you with this promo, and as the side plays it, when I is replaced by we, illness will become wellness for us, and that's the promise.